Have you ever sat in a room that used to be filled with laughter, only to notice how quiet it's become? Not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the kind that reminds you someone isn't calling anymore. Or that the lunch plans never got made. It can sneak up on you. One day you're busy with grandkids, neighbors, old friends, and then suddenly, the phone doesn't ring as often, and the calendar seems a little too empty. If you've ever felt that kind of silence creeping into your life, I want you to know something: it's not just you. And more importantly, you are not alone in feeling this way. Today, we're going to talk about something many people tiptoe around: loneliness in our later years. Not to dwell on the sadness of it, but to bring light to it, to understand it, and more than anything, to remind you that while aging brings change, it also brings strength, and that includes the strength to face hard truths and find joy again. You see, loneliness after 60 doesn't always show up like you'd expect. It's not just about being physically alone. It's that deeper feeling of disconnection, even when others are around. It's when you look at your life and wonder where everyone went. And yet, no one really talks about it, maybe because they're afraid to seem weak, or afraid to face the truth that life has changed. But there's courage in looking that truth straight in the eye. Because once you do, you realize something beautiful: you still have the power to shape the rest of your story. That's why this conversation matters. Because if we don't talk about the tough parts of aging, we don't give ourselves the tools to handle them. So today, let's talk about 5 of the hardest, most honest realities of aging loneliness, and what we can do to meet them with grace, strength, and a little bit of hope. If this message stirs something in you, if it feels like it's putting words to things you've been quietly holding inside, take a moment to like this video or leave a comment below. Your story, your voice, could be the very thing that comforts someone else watching right now. And if you haven't already, I invite you to subscribe to this channel, Vibrant Elders. Here, we talk about the things that matter: real life, real feelings, and how to live fully at any age. Let's start with something that might feel familiar to you: the disappearing social circle. It doesn't always vanish overnight. Sometimes it fades slowly, like a photograph left in the sun. Friends move away, or grow quiet. The friend who used to call every week now checks in every few months. People pass, others get caught up in their own lives, and suddenly, the rhythm of daily life changes. It's not that people don't care, it's just that time moves on. And sometimes it moves people in different directions. You might notice the house feels quieter, the mailbox a little emptier. Even holidays, once bustling with energy, now arrive with a kind of stillness. And it can be painful, not because you've done something wrong, but because this is part of the natural, if uncomfortable, rhythm of aging. I remember talking to a gentleman named Harold, not a therapist, not a philosopher, just a kind man who'd lived into his 80s with a quiet strength. He told me, "What hurts isn't that people leave, it's that I didn't realize I was losing them until the silence became louder than their absence." That's the part that stings the most. You don't see it happening until it's already changed. But here's where the shift begins: not in trying to get things back to how they were, but in choosing to connect in new ways. You can't control who calls, but you can pick up the phone first. You can't stop time, but you can invite someone to share a moment of it with you. A weekly coffee group, a local choir, a community class at the library, even one conversation can light up a week. Connection in your later years doesn't come knocking like it used to. You have to go out and find it. And that doesn't make you needy. That makes you wise. You've lived long enough to know that real connection is something worth reaching for. Now let's talk about another hard truth: the feeling of fading into the background. You walk into a store, and the clerk speaks to your caregiver instead of you. You answer a question, but no one really listens. It's like the world around you sees the gray hair, hears the slower pace, and somehow forgets there's a full person standing there, with stories, opinions, and value. And the truth is, that invisibility hurts. It doesn't matter how strong you are, how smart or how capable, you want to be seen. Not just noticed, but truly seen. To be recognized for who you are, not who people assume you are based on a number. There's a woman I knew named Margaret, 82. Lively eyes, quick wit, dressed sharp every Sunday. But one day, after a service, she told me something I'll never forget. Sometimes I feel like I'm a shadow in my own life. She said, people smile, but they don't really look. They nod, but they don't really hear. That kind of loneliness is quiet, but it can feel heavier than being alone. But you are not a shadow. You are not invisible, and even when others forget to see you, you can choose to make yourself visible again. That might mean speaking up when someone talks over you. It might mean sharing your story even when no one asks. Or it might simply mean holding your head a little higher and reminding yourself that your worth isn't up for debate. And if you ever feel like no one is listening, just know that this space, right here, is a place where you are heard. Your experiences matter, your voice matters, and the more you share, the more we all remember that age is not a silence, it's a song. A deep, beautiful one that deserves to be heard. Let's keep going, because while these truths may feel heavy, there is power in naming them. You can't change what you won't face, and you're not facing this alone. We're in this together, walking through the realness of aging, not to be discouraged, but to be prepared, to be strong, to be vibrant. There's a moment, often quiet and unnoticed, when independence begins to shift. It doesn't shout, it whispers. You catch yourself holding the handrail a little tighter on the stairs. You hesitate before driving in the rain, or maybe you stop reaching for the top shelf in the kitchen altogether. You start to make little adjustments, and at first, you don't think much of it, but then, one day, you realize, these aren't just changes. They're signs, not signs of weakness, but of change, and change can be hard, especially when it touches something as deeply personal as your ability to care for yourself. One of the hardest things for many of us to admit is this: we need help. Not because we're incapable, but because we're human, and aging, while filled with wisdom, also comes with limitations that can feel unfamiliar and unwelcome. If you've spent your life being the one others relied on, the one who cooked the meals, drove the grandkids, fixed the faucet, then letting someone else take the lead, even just a little, can feel like giving up a part of who you are. But here's the truth: accepting help is not giving up your independence. It's protecting it. It's saying, I want to keep doing the things I love, and I'll do what it takes to make that possible, even if that means inviting a little help into my life. I remember a man named James, 84 years old, strong spirit, fiercely independent. After a minor fall on his porch, he didn't tell anyone. He didn't want to worry his kids, didn't want them thinking he couldn't handle life on his own. But over the next few weeks, he began skipping his morning walks. He stopped visiting the diner where he used to read the paper and chat with the locals. It wasn't the fall that changed his life, it was the fear of what it meant. And in staying silent, he slowly began to disappear from the very life he'd worked so hard to build. Eventually, his daughter noticed. She installed a grab bar by the front steps. She started calling more, not to control him, but to walk alongside him. And with a little support, James got back to those morning walks. Back to the diner, back to the version of himself he thought he was losing. That's what help can do. It can bring you back to yourself. So if you're finding that some things feel harder lately, opening jars, lifting groceries, getting out of a deep chair, don't ignore it. Don't hide it. Talk about it. Ask for a hand. Use the tools that exist to make life safer and simpler. A stool in the kitchen, a cane that fits your style, a ride to the pharmacy. These aren't crutches. They're keys. Keys to a longer, fuller, more vibrant life. And now, let's turn to another reality that many seniors know all too well: the feeling of being invisible. This one is subtle. It's not about whether people are physically near you. It's about whether they actually see you, hear you, treat you as the full, capable person you still are. You walk into the doctor's office, and the nurse talks to your adult child instead of you. You try to pay at the store, but the clerk seems impatient, like you're in the way. At first, it might feel like small moments, a glance overlooked, a voice ignored, but over time, it adds up. It starts to feel like the world is moving faster than you can keep up, and worse, like it no longer has a place for you. But let me say this loud and clear: you are not in the way. You are not past your prime. You are not done. The very fact that you're here, listening, thinking, feeling, this makes you worthy of respect, not in a sentimental way, but in a real, grounded way. You've lived, you've learned, you've survived things younger generations haven't even imagined. That doesn't make you less relevant. It makes you essential. I once spoke to a woman named Elsie, 86, still volunteering at her local library. One afternoon, a young patron asked a question about a book from the 1950s. The staff turned to the computer. Elsie smiled and said, "I lived through it. Let me tell you what that book meant to people back then." The girl was stunned. She had no idea the quiet woman behind the desk had a wealth of lived knowledge that no search engine could replicate. That's the thing about being overlooked. The world loses out, not just you. When people fail to see you, they miss out on your wisdom, your humor, your perspective, and so, sometimes, we have to remind them. We have to speak up, not with anger, but with presence. Show up to the conversation. Share the story. Ask the question, even when no one expects you to. Especially then, because visibility starts with you. Not waiting to be invited into the room, but walking in and taking your seat at the table. Knowing full well that you belong. There's a kind of power in claiming your place in the world at this age. It's not the power of loud voices or fast moves. It's the quieter power of lived experience, of having seen enough to know what really matters, of standing tall, even when your knees ache, of knowing that you don't have to prove anything to anyone, but you still choose to show up. There's a certain kind of silence that creeps in when your sense of purpose begins to fade. Not the quiet of a peaceful morning or a gentle walk through the garden. This silence feels different, heavier. It settles in your chest when you wake up and realize there's no reason to rush anymore. No one depending on you to show up. No urgent tasks. No real demands. Just space. And while that may sound restful to some, for many, it's the loneliest part of aging. You spend decades being needed. As a parent, a partner, a worker, a neighbor. Your calendar used to overflow. Now, it often stretches wide and empty. And the truth is, without something to give yourself to, without a reason to get up and move forward, even the smallest tasks can feel meaningless. Loneliness isn't always about being alone in a room. It's about feeling like you no longer have a role to play in the story of the world. I remember Stanley. He was 88 and had spent over 40 years as a high school teacher. Respected, admired, always surrounded by students with questions, energy, dreams. After retirement, there were a few years of travel, family visits, time to rest, but then, the rest turned into stillness, and the stillness into sadness. "I just don't feel needed anymore," he told me. "I miss being someone people came to." What Stanley was really missing wasn't the job, it was the purpose. That deep inner knowing that you're useful, that you make a difference, that your presence matters, and it's something many seniors quietly wrestle with, especially after the noise of earlier decades fades. But here's the part we sometimes forget. Purpose doesn't retire. It evolves. You may not be heading into an office. You may not be raising little ones or fixing someone else's roof. But your life still holds power if you know where to look. It might be in your ability to listen when someone is hurting. In your wisdom shared with a younger neighbor over coffee. In your patience, your humor, your prayers, your kindness, your resilience. There's no expiration date on your purpose. Sometimes it's found in the simplest gestures, writing a letter to someone who needs encouragement, reading to children at the library, volunteering 1 hour a week, even offering a smile to a stranger in the grocery store aisle who's having a hard day. You might think it's nothing, but those little moments, they ripple, they matter. Redefining your purpose isn't about filling your schedule. It's about filling your spirit. Asking yourself not, "What should I be doing?" but "What brings me alive now?" And it's okay if that answer changes over time. What matters is that you stay open to it. Because when you find meaning again, even in a new form, it has a way of softening the ache of loneliness. It reminds you that you're still deeply, profoundly connected to the world around you. Sometimes, the loneliness we feel isn't about others forgetting us. It's about us forgetting how valuable we still are. And I promise you, you are. You've walked through storms. You've carried more than most. And even if no one has said it lately, you matter. Right now, as you are, I'd like to invite you, right here, right now, to think of one thing you've always enjoyed doing. Even if it's been years. Something that used to light you up, even in small ways. Gardening, painting, writing stories, baking pies, teaching something to someone who's eager to learn. Now ask yourself this. Could you do a little bit of that again? Just once this week, just enough to feel that spark again. Loneliness begins to fade not just when people come around, but when your own inner light starts glowing again. That light is still inside you. Sometimes it just needs a little space and permission to shine. And if you're still with me, I want to thank you. Because showing up for this kind of conversation takes heart. It takes honesty, and it takes a deep willingness to keep growing. Even now, that says something powerful about you. You're not giving up, you're leaning in, you're staying open, and that is something truly beautiful. I know these conversations can stir emotions. They can bring up memories, regrets, longings, but they also bring something else, clarity. And clarity is what allows us to move forward with intention. So if anything in this video has spoken to your experience, I encourage you to leave a comment below. Share a part of your story. Let someone else know they're not alone. You never know who's reading, and how your words might be the very thing someone else needed to hear. There's one more truth I want to share with you, and it just might be the most important one yet. Let's keep going. There's something that happens as we get older that very few people prepare us for. It's not about the wrinkles, the slower pace, or the little physical changes we all come to accept. It's something deeper, quieter. It's the gradual realization that your world has gotten smaller, not just in square footage or noise level, but in the shape of your relationships, the rhythm of your days, and the number of people who truly understand you. There's an ache that settles in when your most trusted companions are no longer here. When the people who once knew you without explanation, who remembered your childhood, your stories, your old laugh, begin to disappear. Maybe they've passed, maybe their memory has faded, maybe the connection just couldn't keep up with the years. And suddenly, you look around and feel like you've become a living archive, the last keeper of a life only you remember in full. It's a loneliness that's hard to name, because you can be surrounded by people, by caregivers, neighbors, even family, and still feel that no one really sees the full picture of who you are. They see the now, but they weren't there for the then. They didn't know you at 22, or 45, or even last decade when life still felt wide open. And sometimes, it feels like the world has moved on without you. But here's the truth that often gets lost in this experience. Your presence still carries weight. Just because others weren't part of your past doesn't mean they can't become part of your present. And just because someone doesn't remember your full story doesn't mean you stop telling it. Sometimes, the most beautiful gift you can give the world, and yourself, is to share your memories. Your wisdom, your voice, even if no one asked for it out loud. There's a woman named Teresa I used to visit. She lived alone after her husband passed and her children moved out of state. At first, she barely spoke during our visits. But one day, I asked her, "What's something you've never told anyone?" And she paused, then smiled a little. Over the next hour, she told me about her first job during wartime, how she met her husband on a rainy day, and the exact color of the dress she wore when he proposed. She said afterward, "I didn't realize how much I missed hearing my own stories." That moment stuck with me, because what she really meant was, I didn't realize how much I missed being known. That's the heart of it, isn't it? Being known, not just for your age or your appearance, but for the life that's still inside you. And that kind of loneliness, of not being truly seen, isn't solved by crowds or noise. It's healed by connection, real, intentional, soul-deep connection. And yes, that takes effort, but it also takes courage. The courage to reach out, to speak up, to let someone in. You might be surprised who's willing to listen. A neighbor who's been waiting for a chance to sit and talk. A young person who's never had a grandparent figure but craves that grounding presence. A volunteer at a local center who shows up each week not just to serve, but to connect. And if that opportunity hasn't come to you yet, maybe it's your time to create it. Join a small group, a book club, a hobby circle. Write letters to people who need encouragement. Offer to teach what you know. Even just saying hello to someone new at the store or waving at a familiar face on your street can spark something real. Loneliness loses its grip when you remember that even now, you have something valuable to offer. Your attention, your kindness, your history, your laughter. These are gifts, and giving them, even in small doses, reminds you that you are still alive in the best, richest sense of the word. And maybe, just maybe, this chapter, this slower, quieter, more reflective chapter isn't about being forgotten. Maybe it's about becoming more intentional, more awake, more grateful for the people who are still here and the chance to show up for them with more presence than ever before. You've lived long enough to know that life isn't always fair. It doesn't always give back what we put in. But even so, there's beauty left to discover. There's kindness still to offer. And there's a peace that can come, not from avoiding loneliness, but from facing it with open eyes, a full heart, and the belief that love can still be found. We've walked through some difficult truths together, truths about how lonely aging can sometimes feel. But we've also opened the door to something bigger, the possibility of connection, purpose, and visibility, not as something that happens to you, but something you can still choose. And now, it's time to bring all of this together into one final reflection. Let's go there, together. By now, if you're still with me, I want to pause and say thank you, truly, because walking through hard truths takes a different kind of courage, not the kind that charges into battle or stands on a mountaintop, but the kind that quietly says, yes, this is real, and I'm still here. That kind of strength is rare, and it's yours. We've talked about some brutally honest realities. The shrinking social circle, the body that no longer rebounds the way it used to, the quiet, creeping feeling of being invisible in a world that won't slow down, the slow fading of roles that once defined you, the stillness that invites both reflection and regret, and at the heart of all of it, the deep ache of loneliness that often doesn't look like sadness. It can look like silence. It can look like pride. It can even look like strength. But it's there, quietly woven into the day-to-day fabric of aging. And yet, if you've listened closely, you've probably heard something else underneath the sorrow. A thread of power, a quiet resistance, a spark. Because here's the truth most people miss about this season of life. Just because the world around you changes doesn't mean the fire within you has gone out. In fact, some of the deepest wisdom, the strongest love, the most soulful presence, only come after walking through the storms. And if you've been through them, if you've survived loss, change, regret, silence, and still woken up with a heart that wants to keep trying, then you've already proven something. You've proven that loneliness doesn't have to define you. That just because you feel forgotten doesn't mean you are, and just because some doors have closed doesn't mean you've run out of places to go. There's a quiet revolution that happens when a person at 70, 80, even 90, decides to start again, not over, but forward, a small act of courage, like calling someone you haven't spoken to in years, or signing up for a new community group, or telling your story to someone younger, or finally letting someone help you with the things that have gotten hard. Sometimes, healing starts with the smallest step, a gentle walk after dinner, even when your joints ache, a phone call, even when you're afraid they won't pick up, a prayer whispered before bed, even when you're not sure who's listening. These are not signs of weakness. They are signs of life, of a heart that still beats with hope. You are not forgotten. You are not alone. And even if the world hasn't told you lately, let me be the one to say it. Your life still matters. Not just your memories, but your presence, the way you carry yourself, the way you show up when it's easier not to, the way you still choose kindness when bitterness would be easier. These things make you powerful in a way that only experience can create. And I want to invite you, gently, sincerely, to use that power, not to prove anything, not to fix anything, but to keep connecting, keep reaching, keep loving, because the world still needs people like you in it. People with patience, people with presence, people who have been shaped by time and have something real to give. So, maybe tonight, instead of sitting in silence, you light a candle and write a note to someone you care about. Or maybe tomorrow morning, you take your coffee outside and wave at the neighbor you've never spoken to. Or maybe you leave a comment on this video, just a word, a story, a thought, something that reminds you, and others, that we are all in this together. If this message has resonated with you, I'd love for you to take a moment to let us know. Your comment could be the very thing someone else needs to feel seen. And if you've found comfort, strength, or insight in this video, consider subscribing to Vibrant Elders. This isn't just a channel, it's a place where stories breathe, where wisdom lives, and where community is always welcome. But most of all, I hope you leave this video with a little more peace in your chest. a little more courage in your step, and a little more light in your day. Because even now, especially now, you still have so much to offer. Not in spite of your age, but because of it, and that quiet dignity you carry, that patience, that resilience, that grace, that's something the world doesn't just need, it longs for it. So go on, live this chapter with tenderness, with presence, with the kind of inner strength that doesn't demand applause, but leaves a mark in every room it walks into. Thank you for sharing this moment with me. Until next time, be kind to yourself, be open to others, and remember, your story isn't over. You're still writing it, one beautiful, brave page at a time.